All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Real-Time Payments for Small Business. My name is Nino Teodoro. I am the Director of Business Banking Products at Central One. And today I have an esteemed panel of my industry colleagues here who will be talking to you all about real-time payments, the impact on small business, digital transformation, and what that means for our business friends across the country. And speaking of across the country, we do have representation from literally across the country. We have Carrie Forbes, CEO of League Data, all the way out there in Halifax on the very East Coast. Right in the middle with me, Ron Renton is the Digital Channels and Experience VP at FirstOntario Credit Union. And of course, out west, we have my good friend, Doug Ebner from SASCU, all the way out, literally on the West Coast. So, I know that it looks like I've handpicked a panel of models here from some agency or something, but in fact, my friends are highly skilled and well experienced in the financial services space, nationally, internationally, and we'll get into some of that as we go on. But without further ado, very brief introductions. I'll do a very brief read of your bios here, which I have, which are extensive multi-page documents. But I'll start off, and if you could just give a snippet of anything that I've missed, that'd be great. Again, let's start with Carrie Forbes, CEO of League Data. So League Data is an organization that looks after the technology needs of 46 credit unions out in the Atlantic provinces. They come to League Data for all their IT needs. And Carrie, extensive background in almost everything. I'm reading here everything from being a registered yoga teacher to just, Carrie, I'll pass to you for a couple seconds. What have you done that I've missed?
It's a little bit of a journey, but I think I would sum up a lot of my path has been a combination of technology and HR. I started out in my career at Scotiabank for about a decade, and that's where the payment journey really began. I was hit the ground running on when we first started processing internet banking and e-transfers way back. I also did some public sector work, a lot in digital transformation, and even in public sector, when you think about payment, there's a lot of things that go transactionally, and was fortunate to be in the credit union system at League Data along my journey. So I'll end it there. There's lots of interesting paths, but I'll turn it over to the colleagues here at the table. Thank you.
Very cool. But that answers the question, why should I listen to Carrie today? There it is, right? Ron, I see here that you've been everywhere. U.S., Caribbean, coming from England, former football player. What's the story? What's the background that I've missed?
Well, so a lot like Carrie, I actually started at Scotiabank as well, way back in the days when I had hair, and kind of moved around from there. Had some stints at Canada's probably first fintech, and I was actually in Canada at that fintech. When the first e-transfer was delivered, first e-transfer was sent, back when that company was actually called CertaPay, before it became Interac. And then decided to start with the cold and it went where the weather was warm, to the Caribbean and then to California and then on to HSBC. I'm sure everybody knows HSBC, and now here at FirstOntario, leading some digital transformation. So I don't want to suck up the room, but we've got Doug. We've got Doug, who's the bright guy. So we'll let him have some time.
It actually says that right here in his bio. Doug's a bright guy. Doug. So yeah, I'm a little more casual with Doug. We've known each other for a while now. But Doug, I see here that you're the VP Strategy and Innovation at SASCU. You just recently moved to that position. And you've got an extensive history here. What are the highlights that you want to let the attendees know?
I think, as we go through, our careers are all very different. And mine started when the internet came out. And so I've been involved in digital when making web pages was the new technology. So I've always worked with technology and also really doing process improvement before it was cool, which sort of led to innovation. I was part of the Feline's think tank for credit unions all across Canada. I worked on some pretty cool projects with credit unions. One is that we launched the first wearable payments in Canada before it was built into all the technologies today. So I've been working with credit unions for quite a while, and of course, central as well.
Perfect. Yeah, of course. And just to clarify, folks, anyone joining us here, the session's about the real-time payments and digital transformation impact on small business. And even though all of our colleagues here today are from the credit union system, Canadian credit union system, this is a conversation that has a much broader impact. And to all of our big bank friends who are watching, or any other FI fintech, we'll have plenty of content for everyone. So let's jump into it, okay? So Carrie, we'll start with you. And of course, you know that I'd never put you on the spot or ask anything awkward to make it, to put you in a bad place in front of potentially thousands, hundreds of thousands of people watching. So just in one sentence, if you can just lay out your short, midterm, and long-term plans to address global warming, that'd be great.
Starts and ends with you, Nino.
Seriously, folks. Okay. And again, we've discussed some of this stuff, but what do you see as the primary benefits or downsides to real-time payments for small business? We hear a lot about cash flow and all that sort of thing, but there are ups and downs. What's your opinion on that?
I think it's such a great question. And I know one of the pre-discussions we had, I think a key thing when we look at this topic is when we think about payment. And what we think about payment, it's very different than, I'd say, the actual small business owner and what it represents to them. And so I think on the positive side, real time is going to empower them in a really meaningful way. I mean, I'm not going to list the benefits. I think many people watching kind of would know that. But when we look at the power, the speed of transaction, the type of capital they're going to be able to really work with in that way, and global access and many avenues. We look at that, that's powerful, but the other side of it is, do they know this? And I think the downside is we don't really connect the value very strongly on what this represents from a technical perspective to what they can actually do with it. So to me, I think there's a lot, but there's something missing in understanding, well, what does this mean beyond I'll say, if you're in the industry, it is very powerful, but how does that become real? How does real time become real? So that's kind of, I guess I'll start there, turn it over.
Yeah, we talk about this day in, day out, all the wonderful technological aspects of real-time payments, but you can always tell a payments person at a party because it's the one surrounded by the sleeping people. So very good. Yeah, understanding in plain English, I think, is a fantastic point. Let's just move across the country geographically. Ron, you're right here in Ontario with us. What do you think about that? What do you see the primary benefits, potential downsides of the real-time payments for small business?
Again, to echo what Carrie's saying, the key benefit really is, their ability to move their transactions. One of the things that you hear regularly, very regularly, is, I can't do this. I need to come to the branch. I need to do something. I need someone to be involved in my transaction, and that drops their business case or their use case out from underneath them. When we're talking about small to medium-sized businesses, these are people that don't have time really to come to the branch, that don't have time to interject that piece into their day. They need to be on the move and be able to do these things whilst they're moving, right? The key thing that we look at, or we're very interested in, is, where does that sweet spot actually sit? The large corporates or the larger institutions are going to have a way that they do business. The smaller to medium size have a way that they do business, and then the little mom and pops have a way that they do business. So understanding our data, understanding what our members are actually doing, how that fits in for us, and how it's going to move forward. So the benefits here really in these real-time payments are, where does it fit in? How does it fit in for each group? And how we're going to make that better for them, right? How are we actually going to drive the benefit for them and making them understand it? How does it actually help them, right? How are we going to make your lives easier or better with this new realization?
Right. Perfect. And Doug, what do you think? Are real-time payments as big a deal as some people make it out to be? Where are the up and downs for business as you see it?
I think from a business perspective, it's probably the biggest thing that nobody cares about. And what I mean by that is that real-time payments is really about creating convenience and ease for the end user. So they don't want to know what's happening behind the scenes, but they want to know what they're going to be able to do with it. And I do see that there's going to be a lot of great things for small businesses. There's going to be new entrants in the marketplace, for example, saying, you know what, we can help you build your business and you don't have to lift a finger. So I'm thinking about the way the sales cycle works. They need money. They need to move money around. They need to get payments. They need to be able to put it somewhere. They're going to need loans, quickly. All that stuff can be done very quickly and at their fingertips without them seeing what's going on. So there's going to be a lot of benefits for small business. I think some of the challenges are going to be is which ones are they going to go with, and how is that going to work into the ecosystem that they have for their banking, because there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to take that member or customer experience and own it. And I see that will be a very interesting playing field in the future.
All right. Well, on that note, while there, we'll stick with you for a second, Doug, if you don't mind. So, there's a lot of people watching today. Some of them may indeed be small businesses, right? We have certainly a ton of FIs there, but what is your organization doing to prepare for the real-time payments, real-time rail? And if you have any advice for anyone watching, whether they be business owners or FIs or fintechs, what's your advice to everyone out there in the real-time payments plan?
My advice to everybody, and what are we doing? Okay, so I think we're doing a lot what everybody else is doing, is we're taking a look at the marketplace. We're trying to be able to understand who our future competitors could be, who could take the market share away from us, and also if our products and services still match the needs or going to match the needs, or whether there's going to be areas that may cannibalize itself because the real-time payments and the amount that people are going to be able to move that sort of thing. So we're taking a look at the lineup and making sure that we have a strategy to continue to be current. We're working with our small businesses to be able to make sure that we understand the needs that are out there, and looking for potential partners to be able to say, okay, we know where people are being focused. How can we continue to be able to be prominent in our marketplace? So that's sort of from one component. The others is, of course, working with our technology partners to make sure everything's going to actually work, and getting the timing down for that. My advice for everybody out there is, what I would say is that from the financial institution's perspective, is that we need to be able to start looking at our customer journeys and be more about helping them solve problems than moving their money around. And from the fintechs that are out there, what I'm hoping is to be able to find partnerships and work collaboratively together to be able to create the experiences that we may not be able to do on our own, right? And for the small business, it's going to be fun for you guys. I'll end it there.
Perfect. All right. Carrie, Ron, anyone, do you want to add anything to that? Advice on?
I think, complementary to what Doug was saying, because we're the tech side of this equation at League Data. And it's so interesting because a couple of things that you mentioned, I think, are really what our job is to do. So if I think about the challenge for especially small, medium-sized credit unions, which is really our space, scale is very important in this world. So there are costs and there are risks as well in terms of the adopting of the real-time rail, and being able to find the ways to aggregate that and partner, especially in a cooperative system, is really, really part of what we're trying to do to prepare. So as Doug and his credit unions and their members and their small business members are looking for those fintech partnerships, we're trying to ready this environment to be able to support that infrastructure of both the real-time rail and all the potential connectors and fintechs that might actually come together. And I think that's a role. And I look at Central One. We're kind of two tech partners that also come together. As an example, it's an ecosystem that's coming together. That's what the rail really is about enabling. And we're early days. But I think that, sometimes, although people don't like to hear about what's in the background, that's crucial for if we're not doing that part. then I think it's going to get really challenging for credit unions to be able to have the infrastructure to participate in it. So to me, I think that's the other complementary role that organizations like ours are playing in the background.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Ron, please.
The only thing that I would add on to that, right, is that to convolute real-time rails even further, you have really two players that are in the game here, right? You have the Canadian government, who's pushing their real-time rails, and then you have Interac, who's pushing their own real-time rails, and they're competing for their own wallet share, and trying to explain that to a small business member who's potentially going to be using both or will be using both is going to just add to that complexity.
Yeah.
So the job that we have to do as the credit union or as the provider is make them understand what is the difference between the two, how are the two going to affect, and how are we going to make your lives easier, and what's the best solution for you, number one. And number two, from our side, from that technology space, as Carrie was alluding to and Doug was alluding to, how do we make them work? How do we make them work seamlessly? And how, the member, the customer doesn't care. They don't want to know how the sausage was made. They really don't care at all. They're only interested that when I log on or when I go to make this transaction, it better work. And if it doesn't work, I am going to make sure that it doesn't work, right? So.
Interesting. Yeah, and as we go on, I'm just noticing that I'm getting questions popping up on my screen here. I just want to first of all thank the audience, the attendees, and encourage you please to submit your questions. I do see some of them here, and we'll be asking them throughout the session as they come in. But speaking of the government, Ron, we'll stick with you for a second. I've just got a question coming in here, and the question is, what happened before the Big Bang Theory, and what is your proof of this? You have 3 seconds to answer. So do you? That's not a question. The real question is, it's from Joshua Lerner, and this is about the provincial versus federal national view. And the question is, what are the panelists' view on the best way to inform or update the respective provincial regulators on their payments modernization journey, particularly as it relates to real-time payments for businesses, considering it's largely a national initiative. So, while this is a discussion for all FIs across the country, folks, as you know, credit unions tend to operate on a provincial basis, and there will be some coordination required between federal and provincial level regulators. How are you handling that in your respective regions? So again, Ron, speaking perhaps on behalf of the Ontario Financial Institution Group, what are your thoughts on that?
So at this moment, the framework that's coming out from our regulators at this moment really is mirroring what the national framework is. There hasn't been a lot of deviation from it, but there could be at some point. Mm-hmm. So at this moment, we're very early doors. We don't know if there could be a deviation, and I don't know if there was going to be a deviation, why there would be a deviation. But that being said, we have to be prepared for it. So what we're doing is making sure that we're very, very involved with both regulatory bodies to make sure that we're prepared. What we're not doing is sitting back on our laurels, just kind of waiting to be spoon-fed. We're in there, we're in the mud, and we're making sure, and we're relying on C1, who helps us through some of these things as well, to make sure that they're aware if we're not aware. So we're working in joint partnership.
Doug, Carrie, anything different out east, out west as to how you're handling the provincial wranglings?
Oh, I guess it's fun. We have 4. And we also have a body that's federally regulated, so we've got quite a relationship. But I think what works really well in the Atlantic, for example, and in particularly the last number of years, we've seen a real collaboration. And I think to the point, it's not enough for us to sit back and wait for things. We need to figure it out together. And I think that spirit of understanding and learning contributes to being able to solve together. That sometimes takes some of the contentiousness out of the responsibilities that we're trying to marry up. And it's challenging because in addition to real time, you put in privacy and you put in things that they're also looking at around cybersecurity and other issues that all converge. I think if anything, it's a good time where we're talking more collaboratively now about solving it than we were about trying to figure out, well, who might be right, for example, that might have been in the past. But I see that, and it's still very challenging. But, I think one of the upsides of modern technology is it can solve some of the things that have been in our way in the past. So anyway, I'll leave my comments there anyway.
Well, yeah, and I suspect that your small business owners, your FIs probably have the same sort of objectives, problems, etc. that you'd have all the way out there in BC, right, Doug? I mean,
yeah. To keep it short and sweet, we're pretty much doing the same things. We collaborate with other credit unions around us. We reach out to sort of our lobby groups and that sort of thing to be able to make sure we know what's happening, and also to be able to head off the challenges and question when the regulators are putting stuff out. So what does that really mean? Or here's what we think it means, and that sort of thing.
Perfect.
Stop there.
Thanks. So I've got another question coming here. It's pretty similar to my questions that I have here. And it's all about with the real-time rail, you can see influx of additional fintech competition, competition amongst FIs, fintechs as well, jumping in, new players, etc. I know that you all have different experience with this story before, and also it ties in nicely with a question that we have here from Tariq Khan. And the question is how do fintechs, smaller FIs, and credit unions stay competitive with the big five when it comes to RTR as it relates to SME banking? They tend to dominate every aspect of banking in Canada. Before we jump into that, I mean, with all due respect to our big five folks watching today, and with the most neutrality I could possibly offer, small businesses and medium-sized businesses often do come to credit unions for their banking needs because of our real or perceived flexibility with some of our commercial banking offers. But they obviously, larger institutions tend to have deeper pockets. The fintechs tend to be maybe they've got an advantage in technology potentially, and they don't generally have a lot of the regulatory baggage that provincially or federally regulated financial institutions have. So how do we remain competitive? What are we doing? Anyone want to volunteer to tackle that one?
I'll be happy to jump in on that one. So now I get into trouble saying this, so I might as well say it to everybody else out there, is I don't look at it as a competition. I look at it as how do we better use the technology to develop better relationships for our members and guests. So because that is really what our roots are, is into the community. We serve the people who are part of the community, and we want to be able to make sure that we're doing our best to be able to help them succeed. So having said that, it's really about focusing on creating that better experience and going at it that way. I do know that SASCU itself has been very good at it, and I think that we'll continue to be able to do that as well, right? So I'm
sure there are tons of your competitors very happy to hear that you're not out to get them. So see what their response is. Carrie, Ron, what do you think about that?
So sorry, Carrie. Yeah, I'll jump in here for just a quick second, Carrie, if you don't mind. So what we've done very well here at FirstOntario is spent a lot of time understanding our membership base, right? Understanding what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, when they're doing it, all those kind of good things and tenets of, what you should know about your member, what you should know about your customer. And with that detail, or with that knowledge, we now have a very, very good understanding of how our members ebb and flow, why they do what they do. And with that knowledge, you now know what are the things that are actually important to them. And we've actually gone out to them and asked them directly through surveys and through, to Doug's point, we're a community-based organization. We've asked them, why do you do what you do? What things, if we could change them, if there was 3 things that we could change to make it better, or 5 things, whatever the case may be, what could we do to change? to make it better for yourself, to make it better for you. So we already know what kinds of transactions you do. We know when you do them, how you do them, where you log on, and all that kind of good stuff. But we've asked just blatantly, what could we do to make it better for you? And they've been very candid in their responses and told us, what can you do to make it better for us? With the way that things are moving and the way that Payments Canada is moving, and some of the other things that are coming down the road, we've now built a very strong pipeline of things that we know we have to change to meet our current members' expectations. We've also now understood that if that's what our current members' expectations are, we know what our local competitors are doing. We also know what the big banks are doing, but we also know what just other digital platforms are capable of, what they're doing. And so what we're trying to do is not compete with the banks. We're not even really trying to compete with our competitors. We're trying to compete with what does an experience online look like? How does that morph? And where do we go? Sure, everybody can do a transaction, but does that actually mean anything anymore? Really? It's more about where does the value come to that member? What value can I bring to you? Can I give you more than just the transactions? Can I give you more detail? Can I give you more information? Can I do something for you? And that's where we've started to build out our use cases and started to build out where our future is going. It's not just about giving you the ability to make a transaction and see your balance anymore. It's now more about what can I do for you, right? And that's where we're ultimately going. So we're competing. But we're competing to continue to keep our members and go after the ones that are underserved, right?
Right, and that sounds like it's not something that your competition can overcome with dollars.
No, correct.
Very good.
Ron, that was exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Same page. We share a mind.
Yeah, we're recording this. I'm gonna have to use that someday in a presentation. But Carrie, what do you think? How do you compete with giant banks and other organizations, Apple, Google's, etc., that have a zillion more dollars than you do?
I like to think of it of lessons I think that we learned in Atlantic from the pandemic, which is that hyper-local matters. Your community itself, and credit unions are the ones who know that community really well. And one of the things I had the privilege of kind of reviewing some of the I'll say kind of award-winning credit union innovations that are coming up this year, and just high level when you look at the response that fintech in combination with this, and you pair the technology, now we have the means to act really quickly locally, which if you go back to the roots of our system in there, that's powerful. And you can solve a lot of really cool problems really quickly that aren't just about the traditional sales channels. And that's the innovative part that I think fintechs can bring new thinking to all of that. And if you think about what a transaction really is at its root, it's a trusted trade, right? It's an exchange. And so we're seeing this all over the place getting challenged. Like, what is that again, right? Like that movement. So when you look at the basis of community and trust, that's where I think that sweet spot, and it's right there. And I think what Doug said, it's not really about competition, it's innovation for what we can all learn. And that's exciting, I think, at the end of the day.
Well, really quick question for all you. Just show of hands. Maybe thumbs up, thumbs down. Who's open for discussions with fintechs who want to get into the whole financial institution game? Anyone? Is anyone there? I'm just saying. I mean, our doors are open. I think like never before, right? So that'd be an interesting thing. If we're looking for partnerships, cooperation, etc., please let us know if you're watching. But I've got another question here as well. Coming in, this is from my friend Sayed. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because you seem to have an interesting last name like I do. So the question is this, and this is all about again. I think we've touched on this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but any attempt by the respective organizations to catalog and educate small businesses with what RTR offers. This could provide visibility to new business cases and the cost and complexity associated with them for small and medium businesses who cannot afford investigating. So, in short, folks, if I'm an operator of a small or medium-sized business, I don't have time to go research this stuff, and frankly, my day is generally spent thinking about my business. Plain English, let me know how this changes my daily job, how I can benefit. Tell me the story. I hear a lot about RTR. What's the deal? Who wants to go first? Maybe, you know what, Carrie? Let's start with you. You're up in my top left, and let's just go in that order.
Thanks, Nino. Actually, this one is a really interesting question for me because I love the question, and I think I don't have a good answer, but I think we need to answer it. And I had a conversation, I know we chatted about this earlier, this group. I had a conversation recently with a small business owner who was referred to our organization through the system to talk about cryptocurrency and what our role was going to be. And they were so well versed in it. It was surprising. And they had absolutely no idea what our system was planning. And as we started to have this conversation about real-time payments, it was really surprising to know that, like, here's what we're competing with. And I think, it's not just about the information itself, it's the channels they're receiving them on. Everybody's aware of, the GameStop and these things in the news about investments and things, and these are catching attention, competing with what's really happening and the benefits. So I think there's a national call to action here, really, about it's true. And my concern with that is these are people making decisions based on this information, and are they weighing, like, where do I engage? And so there's risk in that, huge risk. So I think we owe it to the system to think through, how do you get that message across, knowing that there's other actors and systems rising, and they all present different risk profiles. And think about the investments we've made as a system to do this. So anyway, I leave that one there, but I do think it's a big issue on the communication side. And again, us as technologists, we get it, but it's not necessarily the message isn't getting to the right folks.
Doug, you're just geographically next on my screen here. You're up next. So, I mean, I'm a small business owner. So what? Real-time wells. Who cares? I'm
going to add to Carrie's don't have a good answer, and that we all need to.
Ron, everybody, just say it.
What is going to happen is that we do have all of these other ways for people to be able to move money around, right? Through the pandemic, through the experience, is the trust has grown with financial institutions. But what's going to happen is small business is going to say, there's other ways to be able to move my money around. It's going to be easier for me. It may not be safe. It may be just as safe. But they will start to move that trust level to these other payment providers. And those payment providers are going to say, you know what? We can lend you money too. We can keep your money for you. We can give you some working capital. So we do need to be able to make sure that we let people know what our value add is in this area. And it will be through those conversations of saying, we can offer it. It's going to be a trusted transaction. Again, going further down that road is, because of what's changing in real-time payments, they're going to be able to say that as well. So,
thanks, Doug.
But Ron will have the answer.
So here's a scenario. I've got, my family has run a concrete contracting business for years. Yeah, imagine that Italian family doing that. But and if I try to explain real-time money movement to the non-banking affiliated folks in my family, they might not have much to say. What would you say to your commercial members at FirstOntario?
I don't think trying to explain the payments to them is going to be the tough part, right? I don't think that's the tough part. I think that the family, the family is going to know how the payments work, right? They're going to know that they can send money to another bank to make their payments. I don't think that's actually the tough part. I think what's going to be the tougher thing to get them to understand is that now those things where they used to have 3 days for a payment to clear, or maybe a little bit of extra time for money to sit in the account, or maybe a little bit of time for float, the unofficial float in their account for things to happen, is now going to go away, because payments are going to settle the same day. or potentially, the money that they're sending overseas for whatever it might be. Those are going to happen now in real time. So, and you're going to get much more rich data about the transactions that are coming. So it's not just going to show up as a line item, for invoice number 123. It's going to come from invoice number 123 from Nino's concrete business, all the kind of great detail that can come along with that, right? I think the bigger proposition as well, right, is as you're starting to talk about how you're going to market it and do all these wonderful things, what we've been trying to do again is it all comes back to that data, right? Understanding members and what they're doing and how they're actually going in. You tailor your marketing to each individual group, because there's some that really get it, some that really don't get it. And then there's a group that are kind of in the center that they kind of get it, and you have to make sure that you've got all covered, right? And it's just like your retail member base. It's no different there, right? There's some that are really switched on, some that and some that really just don't get it at all. So knowing how you're going to be able to market to them and making sure that you've got that planned out very well, which we're doing, we're actively going through now, is very, very, very important. And it really, when you look at it as a project or as an overall project, it's really just your change in implementation, right? It's how do you communicate these things well to each individual group? And you've got your different diasporas and you work them out. But, to answer that question very specifically, you have to have very clear marketing, right? And you have to be able to create them well, a web page, a banner, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah, that's I think where the rubber meets the road at that level is the key. I mean, between us, certainly at Central One, my good friend and colleague Sue Whitney, running the payments team, and we certainly produce a lot of materials to tell our clients about the benefits, opportunities from real-time payments. But we speak generally at the FI level, right? At the credit union or our bank customer level. But I haven't seen a lot of material out there in the market to really talk to business owners yet to say, hey, this is what's in it for you. And in fact, here's an interesting question for you. This is not scripted, so forgive me, guys, if I'm just sort of blindsiding you with this one. But for some small businesses, like you said, Ron, that 3 days of unofficial float when you write a check, it's basically the thing that's basically kept checks alive, because you get to buy yourself 3 days of holding onto your cash a little longer. Real-time payments basically kills that. So for the payor, we're actually creating more of a cash flow crunch for them, because we're taking their money earlier. For those who use Interact e-transfer, et cetera, that has always looked like a real-time payment, because the money is taken out of accounts immediately. But for check lovers, we're actually introducing pressure. For check receivers, they love it because they're not waiting for clearing, et cetera. What would you say, if you could, again, forgive me for the impromptu question, folks, but what would you say to those folks who are pushing back, saying, no, as a matter of fact, I like my couple days afforded by the slow clearing and settlement system here in Canada? Anyone jumps in?
So the way that we're thinking about it, Nino, very simply is that there's people that are going to write checks no matter what you do, right? Whether we want to get rid of them or not, they're going to write them. The people who are going to get onto these real-time rails, then we have products that we can serve you with, right? We have lines of credit. We have these other things that we can offer to you, and we're going to talk to them about that as part of that communication plan, right? Listen, we understand you as a member. We know that there are times sometimes when where you're going to be in that position where you're stuck. We get it, and we're here to help you. That we're a community-based organization. We understand, so we can help you with that. And let us help you with that and make you understand the totality of it. So there's things that we're going to do to help people, right? We're not going to leave you out in the cold. We're not going to bounce checks on you and make your business fail. And we're going to help them through that. And on that, I'll stop because Doug was going to say something really smart. So,
Ron, I was going to say what you said again. There's a product for that. There's a service for that, right? So basically, as the market changes, it gives us opportunity to be able to create new products and services to serve them. On the flip side, I also think that you're going to see new business models come out for the people who are receiving checks, because we're talking about the small business here. They're going to be able to reach out to their customers and be able to bring that money in sooner as well. So I think just as there's going to be some pushback, there's going to be new models to be able to serve too.
Right. Carrie?
I think the only thing I can weigh in here on these gentlemen's excellent points is that, it's just, I guess, like a high level, there's not a payment method that has been created that's completely ever gone away. And I think that's one of the things that's really funny about whenever we do something to try to replace. But I think to your point, Doug, it's a lot about that's a business model. It's another problem to solve. And the question is it's not about the paper, even though it's a pain to process. It's really about, well, what is it we're impacting? And to me, that's the credit union opportunity as well in a lot of this, is figuring out how, as we progress through, not leaving people behind, right? And to me, that I think is a really, if I do think about technology change and when we do automate, there is always that little piece of responsibility underneath it. Who are you leaving behind? And at what cost and at what risk? So those are issues I think sometimes we gloss over a little bit in the excitement of bringing on the new, but it will come to bear. It always does. So anyway, I don't have any other added solutions, but I think it's just an interesting way to kind of, I think, a reality that we will be dealing with paper checks probably, at least while I'm around anyway.
Yeah, but they were supposed to die last year, weren't they? Or the year before that, weren't they?
Yeah.
Every conference, you hear the same. Anyway,
so we're passbooks, Nino. Don't forget passbooks.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. Passbooks. Yeah, I've actually they still exist. I can confirm that. I've cited one. They're getting more rare, but they're there. Just a couple things. So I think you make a really great point. Where there's a cash flow crunch, address it with a line of credit or operating line for businesses, or any of the cash flow tools that we have. So it's an opportunity to actually cross-sell into that space that may have been ignored because of the sort of built-in float of checks, etc. And fantastic points on that. Thank you very much for that. By the way, I'm not the only one who appreciates your points, folks. We're getting feedback here from the attendees. This is from Kate. Really appreciate the practicality of this session. So thank you for keeping the fluffiness down to a minimum, I suppose, and keeping the commercial, the plugs, etc. out of this. It's fantastic, and I appreciate it too, folks. Let me ask you this. I'm asking you. Go on the other side of the equation. Okay, so open banking's coming. Love it. If I were a fraudster, I'd say fantastic. I'm getting access to all sorts of new information and new points to penetrate to get that information, right? So it used to be some very well-defined pathways where consumer data flowed, and those have been pretty well buttoned down over the years. Now that we get a bunch of new players in there who can potentially share, I've got all kinds of new doors that may not have been tested for security yet. Can't wait for that. Also, real-time rails. That means the money hits my account immediately. So when I do that awesome, successful phishing attack and I get the money landing right away, it means I can have my tickets booked to, I won't name a country, but out of here as quickly as possible. So, there's some interesting things in that whole spectrum of convenience versus security. You can be ultimately convenient, it's totally open. You can be ultimately secure, where you just don't offer anything because there's no risk. On that spectrum, folks, how do you talk to people about the risks inherent with, open banking, real time? As you can imagine, for some of the small business folks that might be watching, having an account wiped out even for a few days has disastrous effects on the operations of the business. Doug, let's start up there with you. What do you think about the security of and the risk associated with real-time payments and open banking and all the great convenient stuff coming down the pike for us?
Well, I will say that this is not my area of huge expertise, but I will say that most fraud is discovered by typically your customer or your member, right? And I don't see that going away, which is unfortunate. But what we will be doing is, again, partnering with technology organizations to be able to make sure that we have some type of new risk models to be able to take a look. I mean, that's something that as credit unions, we do need to be able to partner on. There are, of course, different types of services out there that we would be able to look at. But without knowing the exact problem, like as soon as something's introduced, there's a different way to be able to get around it, right? So we are going to have to continue to build up our expertise and making sure that we're partnering very closely with people. but I do know that there's Carrie, who, again, this one she has an answer for, I'm positive.
I actually do, but this is a caveat, an area that I am quite interested in, and we put a lot of effort and discussions in Atlantic, and of course Senator Colin Deacon, who is a big champion, is in our region, and we've had lots of discussions there. But I live in the cybersecurity world too, and so it's a really difficult balance between opportunity and of course security. However, I think when you look at one of the tenets that we're looking at for an open banking framework, it's about the citizen and the citizen's identity and sovereignty over their own data. So at the highest level. And I think one of the technical problems to solve is the digital identity. So before we even get to transacting in this crazy world, underneath that, we're going to have a different way to identify, which I think is exciting because that actually improves our security profile. And I'm not going to get into the technical know-how, but I think that to me, that's the exciting part, is you can bridge this if we're doing it the right way. But it is, and so instead of thinking, a lot of our thinking has been around, okay, transactions, yes, but the opportunity is actually quite bigger than that for businesses and also the individuals who now you have the power of your own data to do and make opportunity with, as opposed to just having it out there for others. So anyways, I'll get off that tangent and maybe throw it over to you, Ron, for your thoughts.
Yeah, so I agree with Carrie, and I agree with Doug. So I've actually lived through open banking. I've been involved in open banking with my days at HSBC in the UK, and I've seen what happened, and I know what happened. And so the tokenization piece, Carrie, is incredibly important. And if we follow the same model here that we did in the UK, or they did in the UK, that piece becomes the actual elegant part of it, because that really is what opens the doors. The ability to wipe out an account really becomes a secondary piece, because with the tokenization on a blockchain, because really that's ultimately what you're creating, is a giant blockchain, becomes almost nothing is impossible, but it becomes almost impossible, right? So once you have that tokenization piece figured out, then immediately what happens is you open up the world, and it becomes very, very, very it becomes a great proposition for everybody that's involved in it. The piece that you need to start to consider is that the same thing that you're thinking about, everybody else is thinking about, and it's not the people that you think that are going to be your who are going to try to wipe you out. Let me use a different word, because it's not wipe out. It's not the people that you think are going to become your enemies on the battlefield. It's the people who you do business with now that are going to become your enemies, because they have all of your data currently. What they're going to do now is you're already paying them to aggregate your data or get your data. What they're going to do now is have access to all of those APIs, because they've worked into that circle of trust. And now what they're going to do is have access to that data, have all of your wonderful aggregated data plus everybody else's aggregated data, and now charge you again for that data. So they're charged to get in, charged to get out, and have you on both sides, coming in and going out. And those are the players that you need to watch out for, not the other ones that most people are just going to assume that that's who you need to worry about. Those aren't the ones. It's the other guys.
Do you want to name some names, Ron?
Well, I think I don't think it really takes much to figure them out. But those are the guys that you need to worry about. So you need to protect yourself and be prepared for that, because that's actually the guys that you need to be. It's not the big whales. It's the little smaller sharks that you need to be worried about.
That's a fantastic perspective. I've actually never heard that. That is fantastic. Just on that note, folks, just on open banking in general, let's pivot a little bit. I mean, I think we've spoken a lot about real-time payments for small businesses, and the part of your topic in the session description was about digital transformation in general. There's a lot of stuff coming down. I mean, open banking is one that we're just sort of scratching the surface on a little bit. If you were running a small business, if you were running a financial institution that does cater to small businesses, medium businesses, like you all do, What are your thoughts? I mean, where are we going with this? I mean, is everyone on an equal playing field? Do deep pockets truly give you a competitive advantage in this space? What about open banking? You know, Ron, you saw this whole thing in the UK. What do you think?
You know, I don't think that having deeper pockets actually makes it any easier for you once open banking hits, because really ultimately at that point it's just your ability to create an experience, because you're really looking at you're going to have to adhere to the tokenization however that gets created, and then your ability to consume and present that API. So your ability to, you know, sappies and pappies, easy peasy stuff, right? So if you can create an experience and you can adhere to the tokenization, then really it doesn't matter how deep your pockets are. It's about the members' consent, their ability to consent to, yes, I want you to be able to see that data from, you know, however many different people I want you to be able to consent to. Deep pockets really don't mean very much. And that's why I was saying to you a little bit earlier on my earlier comment, it's not the whales, it's the sharks, because those guys, what it now becomes is, it becomes how fast can you churn out new product? How fast can you churn out new deliverables? Because as we know, people are, you know, to quote the movie Up, squirrel. That's really how the world works, right? Is how fast can you get things out? That's really ultimately what you're up against. So it's not deep pockets, it's how fast is your development team? How fast can you churn things out? And maybe it's immaterial to the member, but how fast can you churn out new UI, new UX? Can you keep up with what members are expecting? And that's why you need to focus on what is an expectation of the member, not transactions. Everybody's doing that, but what are they expecting to see, right?
What do you think, Carrie?
You know, what's interesting when we think about digital transformation, and to me, when I see this move, and we're in the middle of a core banking change, so big digital transformation, it's not just the technology. What we're doing is we're changing the business model. And open banking is a very different business model. I think to Ron's point, that's why it's challenging. And the bigger you are, you've got a bigger ship to turn and a bigger model to flip. And that includes your risk profile, the way that you monetize. It's deep. And so if you're able to flip your business model very quickly, you're going to do okay. And again, it's about that speed and following the mind shift very, very quickly. We're seeing this already, I think, in the enterprise market underneath us, in how big players are shifting with the newer ones on platform. And all of those changes are having that effect, not just at the how we do it, but at that business model is starting to put out, because you have to respond to those changes. So I think that's where disruption really, really hits home.
Doug, thoughts?
I think that
you believe in any of the stuff these guys are saying?
I definitely believe it. I think that if financial institutions keep going down the path they are, which is help people with transactions, that we will be giving people our members or our customers. Because truly what we're here for is to help people live their lives, because that's really what finances do. And so if we're not looking at different ways to be able to create value in their lives, they're not going to trust us or give us the additional data that we need to be able to build upon it. So there is definitely needs to be a shift to be able to see how we will allow people to trust us to use the data, because if they don't see value in giving it to us, they're not going to.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, that holds true for all of our business, right?
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. So folks, I'm looking at the time here now. We've got a very, very short amount of time left, like less than a minute. If I gave you 10 seconds each, what would you like to say to your friends watching you now? I mean, let's start. Carrie, you're up first. 10 seconds. What do you think?
Stay strong, everybody, and let's be optimistic, and we can ride through all the change.
Perfect. Doug, you're next. You're right.
I challenge you all to change how we do banking today. So, small things.
Perfect. Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Stay fresh, know your data, know your members, and know what you're going after. That's actually the most important things. Okay.
Very cool. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Sincerely, on behalf of the audience, on behalf of Central One, thank you first of all for giving me the opportunity to moderate your panel. You guys are all fantastic, and sure I'll see you in person one of these days once the COVID thing is over. what can I say? Just thank you sincerely, folks, and to everyone watching, thank you for your time. I hope you walked away with some great lessons on this, and feel free to reach out to any of us if you've got any comments, questions about anything you heard today. We're happy to talk to you, but I want to be respectful of your time. See you soon. Thank you. Enjoy the conference. Bye.